Hi everyone, welcome back to the USCPA classes for financial accounting and reporting. In this particular video, which is part 9 of ASC 842, that is almost last class for ASC 842, we'll be covering the miscellaneous topics and contract combination and its impact on the lease accounting. So let's dive into to understand more in detail.
So next is miscellaneous topic, contract combination. So what is contract combination? We have studied in ASC 606. Do you remember what is contract combination? We have studied in ASC 606.
Sorry, sir.
Do you remember when we have studied ASC 606? In that also we studied this topic, contract combination.
Yes, sir.
In the very first step.
Right, so, correct.
What is contract combination we have studied?
Two or more services are being, rendered over a period of time, and similar services हैं, distinct हैं, but similar हैं. और आसपास contracts enter हुए हैं during मतलब या फिर बहुत ही close time period में enter हुए हैं, तो contract would be combined.
Yeah, partly right, partly incorrect. Yeah, Pulak, Santrupti, Prasant, any of you would like to attempt? Or do you guys remember? Are you here or not?
I'm here, but not sure of this.
So if you go back to the ASC 606 notes of step 1, so there was a topic called contract combination. So exactly the same definition applies here when two or more contracts are being negotiated together or near about the same time with the same party or among the related party or with the related party, then that contract can be combined together. For example, let's assume Pulak and Kamal are brothers. And Pulak has taken an office on lease, let's say at DLF Cyber City. So Pulak has negotiated a deal with the DLF and says we'll pay 100 rupees, $10 per square meter as per square feet as a lease rent. Right, I am taking 1000 square feet. And my brother Kamal, he also need another 1000 square feet. But he will enter into an arrangement after 2 months because he is already having an existing space for which he need to serve 2 months period. Right. So at that point of time, generally, when you know, like maybe your brother, sister, or you need more space, so you try to negotiate together to get a better deal. Generally there's a volume discount, right? So that's the reason the standard maker have understood the intent. Generally, when two or more contracts are being entered by the same party at the same time or near about the same time or for the related party is being negotiated together to get a good deal. Hence, they said this should be combined together and considered as a one contract. But within one contract, there might be various components. That is possible. That is identification or separation of the component. But two contracts must be considered as a one contract when they are being negotiated together or near about the same time with the same party or with the related party. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Second is short-term lease. Short-term lease, very simple, which is for less than 12-month period is called short-term lease. Third is the concept of subleasing. Subleasing, for example, let's assume like there's a mall and I have taken a floor of the mall on, let's assume I took like top floor of the mall on a lease for, let's assume, $10,000 a month, right? And that mall top floor, I created a food court and given on the lease to Domino's, McDonald's, KFC, and different outlets of the food zone, right? So that kind of arrangement is called a subleasing. So I took the lease. Let's assume I have taken top floor of the mall on the lease from DLF, right? And then after I have given certain amount of space to respective food court franchisee, right? To the Domino's, to the Pizza Hut, to the KFC, to the Tim Horton, or any such, right? And that I have given them on a sublease. So that arrangement is called sublease. So I am not an original owner, but I have main lease with the owner, which is giving me authority that I can do the subleasing. So that should be clearly mentioned in your original lease agreement that you have an authority to do the sublease. In that case of scenario, you play the role as a lessor as well as lessee. So you play the role as a lessee for the head lease, which is the main lease, and you play the role as a lessor in case of subleasing, which you are giving to the different companies. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Avneet, Pulak, Santrupti, Prashant.
Yes, sir.
So in that case of scenario, you will be having both the heads, like leasee head as well as lessor head. Leasee head for the head lease and lessor head for the subleasing arrangement. So no effect of the lease assets or liability of the head lease and with the sublease. So you need to account for both. For example, in our example, I said Kamal has taken the entire floor on lease. So when I have taken entire floor on lease, I might have created lease liability as well as I might have created a right to use asset. So that they will not impact. So if you are giving that particular asset further on sublease, it will not mean that you will reduce the liability or you will reduce the right to use asset. They should remain as it is, as it should be according to ASC 842, which you have studied so far. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Second is income and expense should be present in gross unless acting as agent. So all your expenses as a leasing that need to be recorded on the actual basis, and all your income as a lessor need to be recorded on a gross basis because you are not acting as an agent. You have taken the space, bigger space on lease. Now you are being the owner to use that asset according to the lease arrangement. Hence, when you are giving it on sublease, you are not working as agent. So hence, you need to record revenue on a gross basis as well as the expenses on a gross basis. Make sense?
इसमें थोड़ा कंफ्यूजन है. इसमें आपने जो बोला कि सॉरी, जब सबलीज पे हम दे रहे हैं कोई भी चीज, ठीक है, तो उसको लीज की तरह तो ट्रीट करेंगे ही ना. उसमें भी ऑपरेटिंग एंड फाइनेंसिंग लीज वी विल आइडेंटिफाई and then accordingly do accounting for the same, no?
Yeah, let me go through. Let me show you an example.
Okay.
Right. Let's say ABC is the lessor, and let's assume KC is lessee for head lease. And then let's assume I have given on a sublease to
Head lease.
Domino's. McDonald's, or to whom you want to give KFC. What else you want to have in food court?
Sir, Haldiram.
We are in US. We are in US. Tim Hortons.
ओके खुल गया हल्दीराम यूएस में खुल गया इधर
Haldiram. Okay, USA. What else? What else? Whom you want to keep into your food court? Sabaro.
मैंने तो खाया ही नहीं है सर Sbarro आज तक।
It's a wonderful pizza they have. What else? Chipotle.
हाँ, ये बर्गर किंग है इधर।
Burger King. Right. What else you want to have there?
बहुत है सर।
बहुत है. How much is it? 9. Give me one more.
One more.
Hmm.
भाई क्या चलता है होगा भाई? पापा जोन्स चलता भी है
Papa.
पता नहीं चलता है इंडिया में तो बंद हो गया। इंडिया में तो
Papa
बंद हो गया।
Okay, let's assume Papa John. Right. So ABC has, let's assume, 20,000 square feet area. And they have given me on a rent, on a lease at the rate of $10. Right. So I'm paying how much? Multiply by 10. Right.
Yes.
And then after, this is my monthly, let's assume monthly.
Okay.
For let's assume 9 years. So I'm paying $20,000 a monthly rental, right? And then I have done some leasehold improvement. And let's assume I invested $50,000. And for this, let's assume leasehold improvement. Oh, sorry. Life 9 years. Let's assume I invested $54,000 just for ease of calculation. So almost 6,000 per annum. Or if I say 6,000 divided by 12, so $500 per month. So my head lease go 20,000 a month, and 500 is my leasehold improvement amortization cost, right? And now I have given this to all these companies. Let's assume I'm charging $15 per square meter. Let's assume $3,000 from everyone. They have given equal sizing. Let's assume I'm charging $3,000 from each one of them, right? So I'm charging $30,000 from them, right? Again, let's assume I've given this, these all are my subleasee. For 9 years, right? So in this case of scenario, how I do accounting for this arrangement and right, and how do I do accounting for this arrangement? Right, there are two arrangements. One is like from this lessors lessor, and this is sublease, right? So this arrangement, in this arrangement, I'll recognize what all things from the lessee standpoint of view: right to use, ROU assets, and lease liability, right? These two things I'll be recognizing
Yes,
as a
yes.
lessee. As a lessee. So as a lessee, I'll be recognizing these two things. And then as a lessor. So as a lessor, what all things I need to recognize?
Lease asset recognize हो जाएगा. बस वही होगा और तो
बाकी तो वो जो होगा तो कंटिन्यूस रेवेन्यू जो लीज पेमेंट सारी
एसेट ही है वो.
लीज एसेट
Lease
रिसीवेबल के अगेंस्ट
receivable,
सेटअप
हाँ.
होता रहेगा वो तो लीज
ठीक है.
रिसीवेबल.
So sorry, lease receivable is my asset, and then lease liability also come over there, right? And then these all 10 people will also recognize this, right?
सर ये
So
लायबिलिटी क्यों आएगी लेसर के केस में एज अ लेसर?
say that again.
जो आपने एज अ लेसर लिखा है
And going back to the notes to show you the lesser standpoint of view for accounting, what we have studied. Lesser accounting. This is for initial direct cost. So accounting in the book of lessors. 1 second. So lessors ki book mein, this is not a sales type lease because ownership is not getting transferred.
Okay.
So this can be either direct finance lease or operating lease, depend on the period.
Okay.
So in that case of scenario, first you will be recognizing the lease receivable, which is present value of the lease payment plus my guaranteed residual value. And then you'll be creating net investment in lease, which is lease receivable plus present value, and then income. Okay. And then after you'll be having accounting for lease receivable and de-recognition of the asset you have taken on lease. Cash to receivable, interest, cash to lease. Yeah, lease asset. Yes, you're right. So in case of operating lease, it will go on lease rental, nothing else.
Right.
Yeah, so it will be lease asset.
And sir, मतलब जब सब लीज कर रहे हैं तो आई डोंट थिंक कि कभी भी वो फाइनेंस लीज होगी. आई थिंक वो 99% ऑफ द टाइम ऑपरेटिंग लीज ही होगी.
11 मंथ की देते हैं ना, क्योंकि जनरली जो लीज होती है ये इन केसेस में
No, you can give it for 9 years, like in this kind of arrangement. Sublease, it depends.
Okay.
It depends. Yeah. So that's not fixed that it should be an operating lease. It can be finance lease also, but it cannot be sales type lease because the person do not have ownership to transfer.
Right.
Okay. So here, both the accounting, what they are saying, you need to record on a gross basis. The expenses 20,000 and this 500 you need to record as expense, and the income of 30,000 you need to record as income. This is what it means, which we are discussing here.
Right, sir.
So income and expense should be presented on gross basis unless acting as agent. So if you are just a lease agent, property dealer, and providing the property of the main owner on lease, helping them, then you will be recognizing on a net basis, which is your commission. But if you are taking that property on a main lease and giving it to the sublease, in that case of scenario, you will be recognizing both the things on a gross basis. Your expenses of 20,500 and your income of 30,000 need to be recorded on a gross basis. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Rajiv sir, Santrupti, Pulak.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so next point is lease on land easement. Do you know what is land easement?
No idea, sir.
It's like you have taken, like they say, DDA land, okay, they give you for a 99-year lease, right? And even though you're not owner, but you can do anything for a longer period, right? And you can use that land. Like if you see in Delhi, like most of the houses are on a 99-year lease.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes.
So same way, it is legal situation in which title of the land remain with the landowner, but another person or organization is given the right to use land for a distinct purposes.
ये सर जनरली गवर्नमेंट के केस में रहेगा मेरे ख्याल से जनरली या और किसी केस में भी हो सकता है.
Yes, like if generally like government case में, like for example like schools and college land, like university land, they give on a lease for 25-year, 30-year, 40-year, and after that they need to do renewals.
Okay.
Statement of financial position. So next is miscellaneous item is statement of financial position, how you need to present in the financial statement. So from the leasee standpoint of view, the finance lease, you will be disclosing right to use assets and finance lease liability, right? And in the comprehensive income, first let's look at all things from the leasee standpoint of view, then we'll come to the lesser standpoint of view. So statement of comprehensive income, that is your income statement, leasee standpoint of view, you booking the finance lease, including interest expense and amortization of right to use asset expense. And in case of operating lease, it comes as a lease expense. And in cash flow statement for a finance lease, the interest expense will go into the operating activity and the principal will go into the financing activity. And in case of operating lease, it will go into the operating activity. Any doubt on the classification side in cash flow? Simple. And from the lesser standpoint of view, in the balance sheet, in case of sales type lease or direct finance lease, lease asset should be recognized separately from any other assets. You need to create a separate line item. This is a lease asset.
सर ये जो आपने कैश फ्लो स्टेटमेंट में दिखाया ना लेसन के स्टैंड पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इसमें आपने कहा कि जो इंटरेस्ट एक्सपेंस है दैट वुड बी अंडर ऑपरेटिंग
एक्टिविटी. यस.
तो बट ये सर इंटरेस्ट एक्सपेंस मतलब कोई उसका ऑपरेशनल बिजनेस है क्या लीज देने का, क्योंकि जनरली तो हम तब रिकॉग्नाइज करते थे उसको.
जैसे बैंक्स हो गए उनके लिए कोऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटी होती है इंटरेस्ट का,
तो उस केस में भी टू रिकॉग्नाइज इट एज ऑपरेटिंग. तो कंफ्यूजन है कि ये क्या फाइनेंसिंग में नहीं जाना चाहिए था?
नो, इनकम, there are two things: interest income and interest expense. Interest expense, if you see in the cash flow statement, it come in operating activity. Interest income, if it is your normal business part of it, then it come in operating, otherwise it go in financing. But interest expense are generally operating activity if you see the cash flow statement.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So looking at lesser side, so if it is a sales type lease or direct finance lease, then lease asset should be separately recognized. And second, in case of sales type lease for comprehensive income, revenue need to be recognized on a gross basis, and COGS also you need to recognize, so that gross income impact will be come in the comprehensive income. In case of direct finance lease, the profit and loss on lease need to be recognized. In case of operating lease, finance or lease income should be recognized. And then in cash flow statement, whether it's sales type lease, finance lease, or operating lease, everything will go into the operating activity because you are into the leasing business. Right?
Yes, sir.
Now, last point, disclosures. So disclosure include both quantitative disclosure as well as qualitative disclosure. So first look at qualitative disclosure, and these disclosures are being required by both, whether you are doing accounting or making financial statement of lessor, or whether you are making financial statement of lessee. In both the situation, you need to give the qualitative disclosure. The first one is general description of the leasing arrangement. What is the leasing arrangement is all about. Second is significant assumption or judgment which lessor or lessee has used. Like for example, leasehold improvement. You have considered the life of leasehold improvement 5 years, 10 year, 9 year, right? How you have come to that life. So you need to give the justification, right? Next is variable lease payment. So in the total lease arrangement, what is the fixed lease payment and what is the variable lease payment, and what is the contingency available to consider the variable lease payment. Next is option for extension. If there is any option for extension of the lease, that you need to mention. An option for purchase, if at the end of the lease term there is an option, or you can say right or material right is being available to purchase the asset, then you need to give the disclosure of the same. Next is non-lease payment. If there is any non-lease payment, that also need to be separately disclosed. And if the transaction of the lease is among the related party, then as per ASC 850, separate disclosure of the related party is much needed. There you will be disclosing everything, like how much is the opening balance, how much is the rent accrued, how much is the payment made, and how much is the closing balance. Next is residual value. So residual value is again an estimation. It can be a guaranteed residual value or an unguaranteed residual value. Both you need to disclose. Next is restriction, if any, or sublease, if any. So that also you need to disclose. If there is any restriction on the lease asset, that you cannot use that asset for any other than any particular use which is being defined in the lease agreement, or if there is any sublease arrangement, that also you need to disclose separately. Next is leasee creates significant right or obligation that have not get commenced. So that you need to disclose separately. And last one is lesser information about the risk management. So risk management is also very important part in terms of qualitative disclosure. Now coming to the quantitative disclosure part. So quantitative means value-wise disclosure. First, look at leasee standpoint of view. In case of finance lease, so finance lease cost, interest cost, amortization of right to use assets, all these things need to be disclosed in terms of value. If it is operating lease, then operating lease cost, right? If it is short-term lease, then short-term lease cost, excluding any expense relating to the lease with the lease term for a month or less period. Variable lease cost, that you need to disclose separately. Sublease income, right? And disclosure of the on a gross basis, which we have discussed just above. If you are giving it on sublease, then expense need to be disclosed on a gross basis. Income also need to be disclosed on a gross basis, and both need to be disclosed separately from finance or operating lease expenses. Sixth is net gain or loss recognized from sale or leaseback transaction. If you are giving any asset as a sale and that taking that asset back on a lease, so there would be some additional burden generally you are incurring. So what is that loss you are incurring? That also you need to disclose separately. Seventh is weighted average lease term of operating lease and finance lease. So what is the average lease term? You may have different assets which is being you have taken on different lease period. But what is normal average period? That is combination of all the lease period divided by number of lease arrangement. It comes an average lease period. So that also you need to disclose what is the average lease period you have. Next is a weighted average discount rate. So For many finance type lease or direct finance lease, you have a discount rate which you are applying, right? For different asset, you might be using different rate. But what is the weighted average discount rate you are using? So you need to do the rate multiplied by the amount. You will add all those things, divide by the number to reach at a weighted average number. So that is also very much important to calculate the weighted average discount rate and need to be disclosed. Next is a reconciliation of opening and closing balance. Sorry, this is opening and closing balance of right to use asset. So this is also very much important to give how much is the opening balance, how much rent you have recognized during the year, how much expenses you have recognized during the year, and how much payment you have made it, and what is the closing balance. So that you need to give as a quantitative disclosure. 10th point is contractual obligation. If there is any contractual obligation, an option that the leasee is reasonably certain to exercise for each of the 5 succeeding financial year, then plan for the total remaining year. So you need to disclose if there is any contractual obligation in the lease arrangement. Then what is that contractual obligation and how much will it cost you? That you need to disclose. 11th point is a maturity analysis of lease liability for each of the first 5 years after the balance sheet date and thereafter, total thereafter, including a reconciliation of undiscounted cash flow to the lease liability in the balance sheet. And from the lesser standpoint of view, if it is sales type lease, finance lease, or operating lease, right? You need to disclose how much item is going into the profit and loss, how much is going into the interest income, how much is the lease income. That you need to disclose separately. Second is lease sale should be disclosed separate from regular sale. So it should be separate line item. If you are selling any asset through the lease arrangement, right, then you need to disclose as a lease type sales separate from the normal sales. Second is sales type lease. You need to disclose the gross value and the net investment you have made in it. Fourth is direct finance lease. In case of direct finance lease, you need to disclose lease receivable, unguaranteed residual value, and deferred selling profit on the direct finance lease. If you remember, in the direct finance lease, we understood the gross profit is being deferred and it's being recognized as and when the collection is being made. So here it's being your responsibility to disclose that separately, that this much amount of profit is being deferred as the amount is expected to complete in collected in future period. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Next is information about the risk associated with the residual value. So there might be a possibility that there is some guaranteed residual value, but most of the time there are certain unguaranteed residual values. So if there is an unguaranteed residual value, that means there is a risk involved. You are not sure or you're not confident 100% that in future what will be the actual value. For example, you have purchased a computer and after 3 years, what will be the residual value of the computer? It's very hard to determine because the technology will change, right? So same things applies here also. You need to consider those dynamics. Next is information about, explanation of significant change in carrying amount of the lesser's unguaranteed residual value of assets and deferred selling profit of net investment in sales type and direct finance lease. G point is information about how lessor manage residual value risk of the lease asset, which include guaranteed residual value, risk management strategy for the residual value, or any other mean used by the lessor to reduce the residual value risk. So that all, yes, please.
Sorry, ये residual value risk कौन सा हो सकता है मतलब?
मतलब
What
मैनेज
is, one second. What is the residual value that you will be expected to receive at the end of the
end
lease
of the
term,
life.
right?
Right.
Whatever is the, you can say two things possible. One is guaranteed or one is unguaranteed. Guaranteed is you might have got guarantee from the leasee itself
Yes.
that after this term, I'll pay this much amount minimum.
Correct. And unguaranteed is just sale value, market
Yes.
value में ऊपर मिलती
Fair
minus
market
that.
value at the end of the lease term. So that when there is unguaranteed residual value, there is a risk attached to it. And for example, you have a computer. So you do not know after 3 years what will be the actual value of that computer because like technology will change.
Okay.
Same is the case of like automobile. For example, today you have purchased a petrol car, but after 3 years, if legislation comes that everyone has to have EV, so you don't know what will be the residual value. So that risk assessment you need to do.
Okay. Got it.
Good point. H is maturity analysis of discounted cash flow for the first 5 years and total value after that. So here you need to do what is the maturity value after year 1, after year 2, after year 3, 4, 5, and thereafter. So that kind of disclosure is required. Please take a look at this General Motor financial statement or the Microsoft financial statement, which I have shared with you. So there you can see like how exactly the disclosure they make. Or do you want me to just open and show you? See, this is for revenue. Now, if you see here, equipment on operating lease. So equipment on operating lease, less depreciation, lease balances, lease receipts under operating lease. So this 5-year disclosure, if you see 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and thereafter, how much they are expecting. So this kind of disclosure I was saying.
Okay.
So it's this kind of disclosure is being required. Everyone agree? Comfortable?
Yes.
Cool. So let's do a practice question. Both quantitative and qualitative disclosure are required for both the lessor and lessee. Which of the following is accurate matching of the information and type of disclosure? So out of these 4 statements, which one is correct basically? Quantitative.
Inaccurate matching लिखा है.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Which one is inaccurate matching? Very good. So first one is quantitative, a maturity analysis of the lease liability for each first 5 years and after that in balance sheet. So that is correct, which we have just seen, right? Second is qualitative, a general description of the lease arrangement. If you see, this is very first point, general description of lease arrangement need to be disclosed. So this is also right.
Yes.
You guys with me? Third is quantitative, information about risk associated with the residual value, which we were debating just before.
Right, sir. Right.
So this is also right. Fourth is qualitative, a reconciliation of opening and closing right to use asset balance. Is it a quantitative or is it a qualitative? If you see, the reconciliation will be, one second. So reconciliation of opening and closing balance of right to use asset is a quantitative disclosure, not a qualitative disclosure, right? So you will see like the answer is right, but it is a quantitative disclosure, not a qualitative disclosure.
Yes.
So that's the catch over it, right? Everyone agree? Santrupti, Pulak, Prashant, Avneet?
Yes, sir.
So this is it from the lease side. I think we are done with the entire ASC 842. So if you want, we can do some practice in the software also, or if you want, we can close also. So completely your choice. Or maybe we can take a break and then after break we can do some practice. What do you want?
सर क्लोज करके नया एसी स्टार्ट कर दें.
अभी नहीं होगा ये सीन है स्टार्ट.
हाँ वो तो फिर कल ही होगा.
और मैं आपके साथ हूँ सर, इसको ज्यादा जल्दी है.
So I'll send you the notes. Go through it and do some practice question. And if you have any doubts, so we can discuss your doubt. But have you guys gone through these notes or not yet?
I have
Yes,
gone
sir.
through lease notes, revenue भी I have gone through them.
सर वो रेवेन्यू के वो भेज दो
वो
ना.
सर एक नोट्स में ना आपने एग्जांपल अपडेट करा था ना, वो भेज दो अभी एक बार बस.
सेकंड में अभी देख लेते हैं.
हाँ वो फिर मिस हो जाएगा, वो फिर प्रिंट आउट नहीं, विल कीप इट.
फाइल करना है.
You know which page number? Do you remember page number?
सर एक सेकंड में देख के चेक करके बताता हूँ.
नोट्स में होना. एक सेकंड सर, इसमें था थर्ड क्लास में था.
थर्ड फोर्थ क्लास में था.
Okay, let me